Okay, my name is Ben Williams. I'm a Texas broker in El Paso, Texas, and I run a team called the War Team. And every other Friday, we do a session called Friday Forums, and we are doing a live session with the team on Zoom. That being said, we're going to hop into today. Today, we're going to do a breakdown of paragraph 18 on the 1 to 4 family resale contract. To open this up with the statement is that on the average, it is said nationally on the average that 1 out of every 7 or 8 contracts, once they're under contract, they do not close. All right. They fail. They bomb. All right. 1 out of every 7 to 8. Would y'all believe that? And that's a real question for the people that's on our Zoom site. Does that sound about right to you?
Yes.
All right. If you look at the national average, that's what it says. About 1 out of every 7 or 8 contracts do not close. Now, that being said, the odds of you having some disagreement, would you say it's high, likely to happen, gonna happen, maybe to happen, rarely happen, never happens? What do you think?
I would say maybe.
Maybe? Okay. Anybody else got something? Disagreements between buyers and sellers. I would say highly. All right. I would say highly. And paragraph 18 is going to be that paragraph that will have a procedure in place on if and when that takes place. To add to this situation, I will publicly go out, since it's being recorded. I had a situation, Martez and I had a situation in January where we had a client who was a buyer client who thought that we stole his escrow money, accused us of stealing his escrow money, even though we totally explained that his escrow money was deposited at the title company. He refused to believe it. He refused everything whatsoever, and even alleged to come kill me in my office in January. This is a true story. I'm not making this up, okay? Because he said we stole his escrow money. Now, here's the other side of that. There was a disagreement between the seller and the buyer. The buyer did terminate within the option period, and the seller would not sign the release of earnest, which we've all been there. If you've been in this business long enough, you're going to get in a situation where there's going to be a disagreement, and seller or buyer may not sign off on the release of earnest money, giving it to the other party. Trust me, that's going to happen, right? Now, I'm telling you, extreme situation with Martez and I, and to see the other side of that other part from the seller's perspective on the deal I'm telling you about, this particular seller, maybe, I don't know if he was getting counseled right from his agent or not. I can't tell you that because we wasn't dealing with the seller. We were only dealing with the buyer. In this situation, the house was maybe listed at $345, and they wanted to give the buyer the closing cost money, so they wrapped it up in the loan, and it went from $345 list price to a $357 contract price. So everybody understand what I'm saying? They rolled the closing costs up to in the price. By the time the appraisal came out and it appraised at the $345, right? And so on the seller side of that, he was like, hey, I was just trying to help you out, and I'm not giving you your earnest money back because it appraised at the list price. So we could go through all many different variables of how this seller arrived that he was entitled to this earnest money. And the seller had did repairs. Apparently, I don't know, if Martez is here, he could probably talk about a little bit more. I think the seller had did maybe $3,000 worth of repairs too, plus all this. So the seller, in the way he felt, hey, no, I'm not signing off on your earnest money, okay? And this class is not about this deal. This class is going to be about paragraph 18. But the reason I'm talking about this situation is because I want to give you some context of how people can disagree with things and how things can be taken out of context if they're not really explained the proper way. My aim goal with this class today is for you to know how to approach paragraph 18 and how to explain it in such a way that you as an agent are confident in what you're saying. So that's the end state of what I'm trying to do for today. And we don't really talk about it enough. No one goes into their buyer's consultation. I know for a fact, no one goes in their buyer's consultation and they explain paragraph 18. Nobody does that. But the likelihood of you coming in a situation where paragraph 18 is going to be played out is very high. So the reason I sat there and say, okay, hey, look, it's great to start the contract. It's great to do paragraph 1 because, hey, we're starting the process that you know that, hey, you're going to get paid on. But it's even more important to understand how paragraph 18 really unravels when there's a disagreement, because there will be disagreements between buyers and sellers. Okay, everybody with me on that one? Okay, now that being said, let's jump into it. Paragraph 18, the first paragraph, and you guys got the handout. I'm going to pull up the handout you guys got. I'm going to have some talking points here so you can see it. But paragraph 18, somebody, would you care to read paragraph 18A? Anyone? It's on the screen if you can see my screen.
The escrow agent is not a party to this contract and does not have liability for the performance or non-performance of any party to this contract, liable for interest on the earnest money, and liable for the loss of any earnest money caused by the failure of any financial institution in which the earnest money has been deposited, unless the financial institution is acting as escrow agent, may require any disbursement made in connection with this contract to be conditioned on escrow agent's collection of good funds acceptable to escrow agent.
All right, so let's go and break that one down. A. So the escrow agent, and when we say escrow agent, we're talking about who?
Title.
The title company. We're not talking about Joe Smith, Mary Brown. We're not talking about that person. We're talking about the actual title company. It says the title company or the escrow agent is not a party to the contract, not at all. All right. And they're not liable for the performance or non-performance of this contract. All right. I want everybody to make sure, because sometimes we think title is supposed to regulate performance or non-performance, but they have nothing to do with that. They're required to make sure good funds, good funds, mean if you wrote a bad check, that's not good funds. Okay. They're required to make sure good funds are dispersed in such a way, the way the contract states is going to be dispersed. And they're not responsible for any disputes. Okay. We tend to think the title is responsible for disputes. This is a procedural process, and it's a process that you need to understand as agents. They're not responsible for that. That's what paragraph A says. They don't determine who's right or who's wrong. They just follow the process. That's what paragraph A says. Okay. Let's go. Any questions about paragraph A? Let's go to paragraph B. Somebody else take paragraph B.
At closing, the earnest money must be applied first to any cash down payment, then to buyer's expenses, and any excess refunded to buyer. If no closing occurs, escrow agent may 1. Require a written release of liability of the escrow agent from all parties before releasing any earnest money, and 2. Require payment of unpaid expenses incurred on behalf party. Authorized on behalf of a party. Escrow agent may deduct authorized expenses from the earnest money payable to a party. Authorized expenses means expenses incurred by escrow agents on behalf of the party entitled to the earnest money that were authorized by this contract or that party.
Okay, so paragraph B, simply put, the first portion is going to be applied towards a down payment. Now, when you look at that, and I look at things a little bit differently sometimes, when we look at a CD, a closing disclosure, has anyone ever seen where the earnest money was applied to the down payment in the CD? I have not. I've only seen it as line item earnest money, right? And there's going to be a line item for down payment. But basically what this says, that first sentence says it's going to be applied towards the down payment. But anyway, that's just something how I look at it. If there's excess funds, they can be refunded to the buyer. They allowed to do that, right? If no closing occurs, it says here the escrow agent may require written release for those funds. And it says the escrow agent can deduct authorized expenses. Now let's talk about that one for a second. Authorized expenses. In your experience, anybody can tell me a situation where they've seen where escrow deducted some expenses from earnest money? Has anybody ever seen that before?
Yes.
Can you talk to us about it a little bit?
If a vendor sends in a receipt for repairs that were authorized by the seller,
We lost you. Okay, so repairs. I've seen repairs. I've seen surveys. If you didn't close and they ordered the survey, I've seen stuff take out for the surveys from the earnest money, things of that nature for the buyer, because that's, hey, that the buyer's lender required the survey to be done, right? So it's a buyer's expense, or it could be a seller's expense or something like that. Those are expenses that if they didn't close, it's sometimes an escrow agent, this paragraph says, hey, they can deduct that from the earnest money, okay? It also goes on and says, to me, I guess the way I see it also, I feel like when this happens, people don't understand it. And if you don't explain it the right way with your clients, it's too late when it's happening. You know what I'm saying? I think you got to make sure you understand and you explain this paragraph in such a way that says, okay, hey, look, there could be expenses towards your earnest money if you didn't close and you're required to pay something. That is a possibility, right? If you didn't close. So that's a takeaway that I don't think we really think about so much, and we don't explain that, all right? Let's go on to 18C, the demand. Somebody else take 18C. We got a lot of people on here. Somebody else read 18C.
Upon termination of the contract, either party or the escrow agent may send a release of earnest money to each party, and the parties shall execute counterparts. Oh my God. Of the release and deliver same to the escrow agent. All right.
You may have some tequila in front of him.
No. Man, it's moving.
There's a glass and what do you need?
Can you stop? I don't need like authorized expenses from the escrow from the earnest money payable to release and deliver same to the escrow agent if either party fails. Oh man. Either party fails to execute the release, and party may make a written demand to the escrow agent for
It's Floyd Mayweather is
for
reading right
customary.
now.
if only one.
Floyd Mayweather is kind of right now.
Whenever y'all add on to the thing, it moves my damn thing. Open your eyes, Carmelo. It's Black History Month. Stop it.
It's over.
Oh, my bad. Party maker. Where am I? Release the earnest money to each party, and the parties shall execute counterparts of the party may make a written demand of the escrow agent for the earnest money. If only one party makes written demand of earnest money, escrow agent shall promptly provide a copy of the demand to the other party. If escrow agent does not receive written objection to the demand of the other party within 15 days, escrow agent may disperse the earnest money to the party making demand reduced by the amount of the unpaid expenses incurred on behalf of the party receiving the earnest money, and escrow agent may pay the same to the creditors. If escrow agent complies with the provisions of the paragraph, each party hereby releases escrow agent from all adverse claims related to the dispersal of the earnest money. Good Lord.
Ooh, that was a tough one, boy. God. All right, let me jump in there. So paragraph 18C. The first thing, this is where everything gets good. So this is a situation where no release was signed by either party. All right. No release was signed. Okay. And in the event that happens, what do you think most agents do at this time, excuse me? Who's been here before? Who's been in a situation where earnest money was not released? Amanda, you was just in this situation.
Yes, we ended up getting it released, but what did
But
we
in the moment, in that time, when you found out, hey, what did you do?
I
Cried.
okay, I'm gonna tell you my Mello, I'm not gonna take advice or anything from somebody who can't read. Okay, so no, what I did, honestly, what I did was I was highly concerned. I did freak out. I communicated to my buyer because I took into consideration what you always say. Bad news doesn't get any easier and give it right away. I did let my buyer know right away that the seller wasn't going to release the earnest money. And I explained what his options potentially could be after speaking with you, Ben. So I gave him his options of either he can take the seller to court, right? That was one of the options, is to take him to court and fight it out that way. Or there was another one through title, and I can't remember the name, Ben. There's a different option through title, or we go through like due process.
Yeah, it's called interpleading.
Interpleading. Yes.
All right. A little bit different than how I saw it, but okay. I'm glad you chimed in. What I think you should do is in the moment when it happens, yeah, you got to talk to whoever your prospective client is. It's a seller. You got to talk to the seller about, hey, what's going on with them and what the outcome could be, right? If it's the buyer, you need to notify them what's going on. Hey, this is what's happening. When it initially happens, I'm of the thinking that people's emotions are high and people are pissed. And there's a process that they got to go through to understand what's really taking place and what's at risk. But I do believe if you're on the buyer side, if you're the buyer's agent, within 24 to 48 hours of someone telling you as an agent that the seller's not going to release the funds, you need to start letting your client know that they, as a party, have the right to write this demand letter. Okay. A lot of times agents just sit and wait. And a week will go by and they haven't initiated anything to tell the client that they need to write a demand letter, right? Because once the demand letter is sent to title, that's when the 15 days start in order for the process to go the way it's supposed to go. We tend to, as agents, will wait and wait when we should be saying, hey, Mr. Seller or Mr. Buyer, okay, this is where we have to exercise our right to write the demand letter about releasing this earnest money to you. Do not wait. I can see 24, maybe 48 hours to wait to see if this seller's going to change their mind or the buyer's going to change their mind or whatever. But in the event they don't, we don't need to wait a week later, 2 weeks or whatever. We need to make sure we initiate the process of, based on paragraph 18C, to write the demand letter. That's the next steps. Also, 18C says, okay, if the demand letter is sent, it's supposed to be given to the other party. The other party has to object to this within 15 days. If no objection is received, the earnest money can be released and title can release the earnest money to the other party. That's something that you really need to understand and explain to people what really takes place. I think a lot of agents don't even know that this actually exists, but now you guys do. So in the scenario that we just said and earlier, we had a seller that refused to sign the earnest money. Everything was legit. The buyer terminated within the option period. Seller's angry. Okay, that's going to happen. Refused to sign, right? No problem with that, right? Now, at this point in time, I guess you should know what to do if you're on the buying side. And what should you do? Just for the sake of me knowing that you know what to do. What should you do?
Wait no more than 24, 48 hours. From there, request a demand letter from your buyer.
Right. And the demand letter comes from the particular client. It does not come from you. You don't write it. You don't do all that stuff like that. It comes from the buyer. Okay. Or in the case, if it's vice versa, it should come from the seller. All right. Let's keep on going.
I have a quick question on this. So if I put the demand letter in, is it going to be title's responsibility to let the other party know that this letter has been turned in? So are they giving both parties a chance? Are they notifying them? Or is it like, if I give them the letter, it's up to them to find out if it's there?
Great question. So the way this process is supposed to work, and I'm going to tell you, not all escrow agents are the same. Okay. The way this process works, the escrow agent is supposed to take the demand letter and make sure the other party gets it. They need to sit there and receive it. I think as a buyer's agent in this case, you need to get some type of confirmation that it was received and on what date did they send it. I think that's the next thing, so you can start counting your days. Okay? But good question. Sometimes the escrow agent may not send it for whatever reason. And you may have to nudge this person, hey, did you send it? Please confirm that you have sent it over to the other party. So there's nothing wrong with that, okay? Let's look at D. I'll take D after Carmelo's. I'll take D. Any party who wrongfully fails or refuses to sign a release acceptable to the escrow agent within 7 days of receipt of the request will be liable to the other party for damages, the earnest money, reasonable attorney fees, and all costs of a suit. All right. So essentially with D, if someone wrongfully fails or refuses to sign the release after the fact, all of these things can be liable to that other party. All right. This is all after the fact. Okay. E, escrow agents notice will be effective when sit in compliance with paragraph 21. Notice of objections to the demand will be deemed effective upon receipt of by the escrow agent. So again, there's that paragraph 21 where people won't fill it out properly. They won't put the emails, they won't put the numbers, they won't put all that stuff, but they're saying, hey, the escrow agent has to follow whatever's in paragraph 21. So that tells me paragraph 21 is even more important, because if we have a disagreement, the escrow agent has to use that paragraph to send out notices. Okay. Now let's go with the situation with this. Let's say no one releases. Demand letter goes out on time. The other party objects and sends another objection back. And we're in a stalemate. And nobody really wants to do anything other than, hey, I want my money back. What happens then? Which was Amanda was alluding to. What happens in that situation?
I would say you have to go to court. Small claims court.
Ultimately, that's what happens, but let's talk about the process. The process is the process. It's not, take the emotion out of it. If that was the case, title will initiate with this process called interpleading or interpleader. That's the name they have for the judicial process. And title goes to the JP court or whoever, the judge, and they take this earnest money, they put it in the court registry, and they give all the documents, all the addendas and contracts and everything over to a court system, over to a judge, and places it in a court registry. And now a judge will decide who gets what. And now at this point, a process that they were arguing over $2,000-$3,000 could turn into $15,000 to $20,000 in the court system. So please understand this, because if it goes to that, it's not going to be pretty on anybody's behalf whatsoever unless they win. Okay? So I say this all to say, when we have earnest money for $1,500 and people are fighting over $1,500, the process to start the interpleading process usually costs anywhere between $700 and $800. Guess where the title company is going to get that $700 to $800 from?
Earnest money.
They're going to take it from the earnest money. So there's $1,500 going to a registry, but of that $1,500, $700 to $800 is going to be the cost to do the process to the court. And now you got a buyer and seller probably arguing over $750 or $600, going to court, and maybe cost them thousands of dollars only to really get out $600-$700. Now, obviously, if the earnest money was a lot more, 5-10 grand, maybe you could have an argument about that. But when we're talking about $1,500, $2,000, $3,000, at the end of the day, if there's a dispute, it is probably best for the agents to really talk to their clients and come to some negotiation to release half or 1/3 or whatever, right? You guys got to know what the end process is going to be, or what it's going to look like, to make sure if you get in this disagreement area, hey man, you probably go take an L, but there's a bigger L down the street if you go to court. Okay? So something I want you guys to understand, I know we don't really go really in depth on this conversation or this paragraph when we really explain in the contract, but it's a huge paragraph when you get to a disagreement. And the likelihood of you getting to a disagreement is very high in real estate, especially when you're dealing with people's money.
I have a question on that, Ben. Maybe, or not maybe a question, some way that I'm asking for guidance on how, because for example, my specific situation, my buyer, we're now executed in a different contract with that situation. He did feel defeated, and he does feel, unprotected with a contract. So how do we help our clients feel comfortable that the contract means something? That, of course it means something, but that for specifically my situation, that he can lose earnest money even if he didn't break contract.
I think it's a calculated assumed risk. The calculated risk is that you need to just tell them beforehand, before we get to a disagreement, before we get to all this other stuff. Now that you know this, now you approach this explanation a little bit differently. I don't never tell anybody that they're going to get their earnest money back. Never. Obviously, because I've been in this situation so many times, I'm like, there's a possibility you can get your money back, but I don't never tell them that you're going to get all of it back, because I know there's a risk involved every time you do every deal. Every time you put earnest money up, there's a risk for that buyer or that seller not to get it back. Okay? I will tell them we do everything we can to protect their earnest money, which is a true statement. But this is the process, and the process is not the process is paragraph 18. The process is a procedural thing. I have no emotion in it, and I'm going to tell people exactly what the risk is. There's a possibility we can't get all your money back, but there's some risk involved anytime you put earnest money up.
Got it. Thank you so much, Ben.
Yeah, this just helps you be better on the front end. This is a front end conversation, more of a back end conversation. So today, I just hope you guys understand why I wanted to do this paragraph, why I think it's important, but it doesn't stop anything you're doing. You're still going forward. You got a better understanding of it today than you did yesterday. Okay. All righty. I'm going to land the plane there. I hope you have a great, amazing week. If you need something, hit Martez up or Marty with the CDAs and things of that nature. All right. Okay. Talk to you guys later. Have a good one.